Is your dog sensitive to fireworks, thunderstorms, or other loud noises? In this episode, we dive deep into sound sensitivity and how you can help your dog cope with frightening noises. Welcome to Life Unleashed. Hey, it's Sarah. Welcome back to the show. It's a funny thing, but today we are talking about sound sensitivities, and right outside my window is a colossal thunderstorm. Thankfully, my dogs have been conditioned. They're all lying here relaxed, and I'm happy to be on the air with you. Most of you probably know that dogs hear better than we do. That's why sometimes when we're watching a show or we're just chilling in the kitchen or living room and our dog suddenly, whoa, 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 it really startles us because we didn't hear anything, but clearly our dogs do. You always want to remember your home is your den, your yard is your territory, and everything else is the world beyond. So many dogs, when they hear something in the world beyond, react by barking. They're like, whoa, whoa, look what's out there, look what's out there. The biggest mistake people make when their dogs are barking is that they shout at them. But we're not talking about territorial barking today. We're talking about dogs who are ultimately terrified when there's a thunderstorm or when there's fireworks or even when the like coffee grinder starts or they hear a vacuum. Many dogs, and it can be breed specific, temperament specific, have a phobia of unfamiliar sounds. This show is going to talk about how you can condition a young dog to accept different sounds so they don't startle them, and also how to deal with your older dog, during celebrations, during a thunderstorm, or even when somebody's in the house fixing a pipe. One note, pharmaceutical sedatives prescribed for noise sensitivity can be helpful in calming any pet, including your dogs, who have noise phobias. The following tips in this podcast present a behavioral approach for supplemental or alternative use before you turn to medical treatment. It is not a criticism of medications or your veterinarian's advice. To explore these treatment options, contact your veterinarian. And listen in at the end of today's podcast where I speak to Dr. Sarah Cutler, a veterinarian and behavioral expert, on the various medicines that are available to help your sound-sensitive dog. Nobody wants their dogs to feel scared. Nobody wants their dogs to feel stressed out. And there was an interesting study that showed 1/3 of dogs who are dramatically sound sensitive also suffer from separation anxiety. Fun fact, hearing is actually species specific, which is just a fancy way to say the sense of hearing means different things to different animals. So for us, hearing is not primal. Vision is primal. We hear things, but we don't hear things with the acuity of our dogs. So again, fun fact, kind of interesting. Human hearing is about 1/3 as acute as a dog's hearing. And that's just an overview because they hear different hertz and different intensities, but you don't need to know all that. It's important to remember that dogs hear better than we do. So when we hear a noise, your dog hears it more intensely. And if they're unfamiliar with the noise, it's similar to how you would feel if there was suddenly a strange noise that you never heard before. Your heartbeat would start speeding up. You would try to figure out what that noise is. And if you were a dog and you couldn't figure out what the noise is because you're not human, you don't understand appliances, you might get even more intensely nervous. So what happens to the brain when it gets startled? Whether a human or a dog, your brain floods your body with adrenaline, which gives you superpower and energy, and you focus on whatever the disturbance is. If it can't be interpreted, if I don't know what it is, if the dog doesn't know what it is, then the next hormone that floods our system is cortisol. It's a worry hormone. It's anxious. We feel nervous. Now, me and you, if we hear a noise that's unfamiliar, we could probably figure out what it was based on the fact that we've been around a while and we know the variety of noises that enter our world. But to a dog who doesn't understand human appliances and the nuances of our everyday life, they often get really startled. So it's fascinating because if you know how dogs communicate, you can kind of read what they're thinking based on their body postures. Let me go over just some basic everyday signs that your dog might show when they're startled. So low-level distress might include drooling, whining, as they kind of look around and try to orient themselves, lip licking, yawning. Levels of high stress would include hiding. They can sometimes self-mutilate, that just chew their paw or another part of their body raw. They might exhibit impulsive attempts to escape, like trying to climb out a window that might be ajar or biting the wood molding around a door. They also might vomit. They might lose control of their bladder. I mean, dogs really do exhibit these things when they're under a lot of distress. So let's look at the sounds that might be distressing your dog. I want you to write them down. Call them triggers, things that trigger your dog to feel afraid. I like to write a chart, and I'll say, a trigger. Maybe the trigger's a thunderstorm or fireworks or when my kids are fighting or when, I'm using the mixer. So different things trigger different dogs. Then I like to put the next column would be their reaction. And then you can look at your dog. How do you know that they're distressed? Are they pacing around? Are they whining? Is their tail down? Are their ears back? Are they licking their lips? Are they, really distressed and looking for a place to hide? Frantically looking for a place to hide. Write down how you know your dog is distressed. Then I want a column for how you react to it. Now, let's look at the different things that might be stressing your dog out. So we often, when we're celebrating, we're either having a party, maybe it's a loud band or they're fireworks, we stay up late. So dogs are very predictable in their everyday routines. My dogs like to go to bed between 7:30 and 8. I no longer have crates for them. I have dog beds. You might still have a crate, but they will actually go upstairs on their own and put themselves to bed. And when they go to sleep, they're deep sleep, kind of like how I sleep at night. It's a nice, deep, replenishing sleep. So let's say your dog's just gone to bed, you're celebrating or having a party, and then suddenly someone shoots off fireworks. Or a band starts up and there's a really loud drummer. Right away, it feels similar to like if I was going to sleep and someone set off dynamite in my living room. I mean, it's so loud. And they just kind of freak out because boom, 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 pop, pop, pop. Makes no cognitive sense to the dog. It sounds like the sky is falling. I also just pity the deer and the little raccoons stumbling about getting their, sustenance. All of a sudden, it literally feels like the world is coming to an end. Now, if the dog has had no imprinting, no socialization to that sound, it is going to terrify them. Again, I was just staying in a hotel and the fire alarm went off at 3 a.m. and I thought I was going to climb the wall. So to the dogs, when these things happen episodically, not very often, periodically, they have no emotional template to figure out what the heck is going on. So dogs who are prone to sound sensitivity will go from 0 to 60, deep sleep, to frantically looking for a place to hide, diving under the bed, running, into a closet, trying to jump out a window. It is terrifying. So think of the experience from your dog's point of view. That said, if your dog is used to those noises, they might lift their head, look around, and go back to sleep. But a dog who isn't gets terrified. So We are going to look a little bit later at the 5 steps in helping your dog or puppy get more accustomed to these noises, as well as condition them how to self-soothe when these things happen. Unfortunately, you can't just tell your neighbor to turn down the block party they're having. But there are things you can do to help your dog feel more safe. And we'll come back to this. Second thing that dogs become fearful of is thunderstorms. And this can happen at a very early age during what I call a fear imprinting period. It's during those early months of puppyhood where they're just more acutely aware of their surroundings. And if they don't have a model, another dog or person, if they don't have a model of how to process and cope with this noise or thunderstorm, they can develop deep phobias. So we have fear impressioning periods. We have puppies that may just be separated. Maybe they're at their new home and they're crated, or they're gated in a room and they're alone. You can have secondhand dogs that you've rescued and you don't know what their life experience is. But thunderstorms are terrifying for a couple of reasons. First, there is the anxiety that starts before the storm even begins. The fancy term is the shift in the barometric pressure. But just think barometric equals air pressure. So there's a shift in the air pressure, which actually causes discomfort in dogs. It can cause joint pain. It can cause congestion. It can suddenly cause a drop in energy. So your dogs not only are associating thunder to loud noise, but they're associating it to discomfort, and the two can get tied together. Again, when thunder is loud, really loud, it sounds like the sky is cracking in half. And to a dog, that can feel scary, especially if they have no other dogs or no people around. The third category I've outlined today in this sound sensitivity podcast is loud, unexpected noises. Now, fun fact, when puppies are little, like little, day 1 to 12 weeks, they are really experiencing the world for the first time. They go through an intense socialization period between 5 and 12 weeks. And it's during this time that their brain is developing. So during the imprinting phase, if you have a young puppy, try to expose them to any sounds they might hear during their lifetime, even traffic sounds, even the sound of construction or plumbing or housekeeping. Get all those noises in. Okay, so if you have an older dog that has sound sensitivities, or you've rescued a dog that startles to unfamiliar loud noises, what can you do? Here's the deal. There are things you can do. One of the most important things is to stay calm, act like been there, done that, this is all okay, and make sure that when your dog is having a nervous reaction, that you're not shouting at or spitting commands or telling them what to do. You want to reassure them in a way that calms them, that gets them to feel connected to you and safe. Okay, I have 5 tips to help soothe your pet's anxiety. Number 1, develop, practice some comforting, self-soothing activities. So a self-soothing activity for you might be playing with your phone, chewing your nails, twirling your hair. Those are things you can do to calm your own nerves. To a dog, they would include chewing on a bone, maybe playing with a busy toy, or a licky mat where they can lick the mat over and over. Repetitive things that they can just zone out to. If you only introduce these things when your dog is stressed out, they're not going to do them. Think about if you're stressed out, you're not going to suddenly pick up a new habit. You're going to rely on old habits. so far their old habits are like running for cover and trying to climb out the window. So we want to develop some new self-soothing habits. There are many, many bones on the market, so try to find one that your dog just loves. And there are also many busy toys and many licky mats, so try to find those things that really excite your dog, really help them settle down and focus on whatever it is they like to do. Now, when you have 2 or 3 of your dog's favorite self-soothing activities, watch for opportunities to kind of introduce them to help calm your dog down. For example, maybe you give them a bone when you have a visitor or when you have a utility person there. So you're basically saying, hey, instead of focusing on that thing, why don't we go in the other room and chew on a bone? Now, dogs like to have comforting activities that remind them of your time together, that remind them when they were happy. So now the second step is to introduce these self-soothing activities, not when your dog is in an anxious state, but when your dog is maybe preoccupied with someone or something else. The next thing I want you to do is to create a safe place. Now, a safe place is somewhere that you go with your dog or that your dog chooses to go into to feel comforted or calm. I know my dogs love my bedroom. My dog Hootenanny loves to sit in the downstairs bathroom. Don't know why, but this is her safe place. So maybe your dog has already picked their safe place. Maybe you're going to choose it. If you choose it, decorate that safe place with comforting dog beds, with bones that they love. Go in there, pet them, speak calmly, so that this place has all that innate feeling of being protected. Safe place should be darkened. I love blackout shades. They really help because when a dog feels scared, they just want to run for cover. So have blackout shades, have some kind of soothing music you can play, whether it's piano classical or soft rock. Fun fact, they've done studies to show that dogs love reggae, soft rock, and piano classical. So choose one of these to play in your dog's safe place. Make sure that their safe place has those favorite bones or those favorite activities that they love to do. And spend time in their safe place. Maybe it's right before bed. Maybe your dog loves to have their belly rubbed, or they love a scratch behind the ears, or they love when you talk to them or sing them a little melody. Go into the safe place so that it becomes a comforting place for both of you. Now, we still haven't gotten to the storm yet. I want you to do things that build up your pet's confidence. If you have a nervous dog, ask yourself, is there something that I do with them that makes them feel supremely happy? Maybe throwing a ball or having them do tricks for treats. If you don't have things that can make your dog feel supremely happy, figure it out. A lot of dogs just love to chase toys that are tied on like a string. I use old leashes or a 10-foot piece of rope. I tie it around like a stuffed bunny, and I just swing stuffed bunny around, or I pull stuffed bunny through the long grass, and my dogs love to chase their bunny. The deal is, dogs are very predatory, and since they don't have to hunt for their food, they often don't have any way to, get rid of that excitement of chasing things. So let's create some predatory play activities. Another thing a client used is they tied a half-gallon milk jug onto a string, popped the top off, and slathered peanut butter all around the inside and the outside of the lid. The dog loves peanut butter, so it would chase the bottle around and around in the yard or through the dogs. Absolutely love it. So there's some fun games you can play to build your dog's confidence, that excitement that they can do something to earn rewards. They can do something to earn your affection and your attention, and they love it. We're going to use some of those games, maybe some of the words you teach them. Dogs love to sit before they get something rewarding. I call it saying please. So my dogs sit before I give them their food or before I give them a bone or a toy. Come is a fun game to play. It's a great one to play with treat cups. I teach my dogs go to your mat. So you don't have to teach them every trick in the book or every obedience command there is on the face of the planet, but even responding to a few can build their self-confidence and learning that they can hold their impulses, they can stay on all four paws, they can do it. And doing so earns them your approval, your respect, your love, and your time. So number 4 is an important one. When fear strikes, avoid direct eye contact. Avoid staring at your dog. And people always call me on this one. They say, what? I always look at my dog. The thing you have to remember about dogs, fun fact number 5 or 6, is that dogs stare. And I don't mean looking at your dog and telling them they're good, but I mean stare, like dead on stare at each other when they are in the midst of a confrontation. Like 2 dogs on a leash coming towards each other will stare. They'll walk around staring at each other. And puppies stare at each other when they're inviting play. So a puppy will stare at another puppy, inviting them to play. They'll go down into a play bow, and then there'll be like a fracas, like a rough, exciting play session. But other than that, those 2 instances, dogs don't stare at each other for a prolonged period of time. And this is so important to remember, because if your dog's getting fearful and you stare at them and you tell them, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, over and over again, or you stare and say, sit, 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 repetitively, your dog's going to get a mixed message. Remember that your dog really does want company when they feel fearful. They do prioritize your relationship above all others. And when you're with them, you want to model calmness. I'll take a book. I'll speak in a calming way. I'll do what I call the soothing effects of mother tongue, where I'm just petting them in long, loving strokes. Or if they love it, I massage their temple. I'll do things that the dog finds comforting, but I'm not going to stare and bullet command, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, or sit, sit, sit. And I'm not going to go really high pitch, because high pitch sounds kind of like whining, and it can cause more distress instead of a feeling of comfort. So, when fear strikes, let's review how to calm your dog. Number 1, you should have created a safe space that either your dog finds comforting or that you make comforting by darkening the area, playing music, and giving them comfortable beds or fleeces or even your sweatshirts. Many dogs like to go for cover. So if you have a high bed or you have a closet, you can open that area and make it comfortable for your dog. We're going to remember to provide self-soothing activities. This is just a good rule of thumb. Anytime your dog might be excited or anxious or distressed by something. Now, to review, instead of running window to window or zooming around the house in an attempt to escape, you want to encapsulate your dog in a safe area, give them a bone, sit there, look on your phone. I'm often reading. Model how to breathe calmly. And if your dog wants to lean on you or be next to you, that's okay. Just pet them or touch them in a way that they find comforting. If they don't want to be near you, that is also okay. Every dog is different, and you're going to find out just what makes your dog feel safe. Remember that a comforting small area is preferable to a wide open house. If you know that there's a storm coming, if you know it's 4th of July, another quick hack is to spend time with them earlier in the day, going for a hike or letting them run or taking them for a swim. So by the time the storm or the noises or the utility guy breaking your wall down arrives, you can have your dog tired out a little bit. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Sarah Cutler, a small animal veterinarian who has worked in the field for 30 years. She has a special passion for feline and canine behaviors and is guided by her passion to work towards the human-animal bond and for the welfare of all pet dogs and cats. She runs 2 practices, at-home vet care and the behavior clinic for cats and dogs. Welcome, Sarah, and thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
We are talking about sound-sensitive dogs, and I kind of have 2 categories. Those dogs who might be afraid of thunder or fireworks, but are otherwise comfortable in the home, and dogs that may have been rescued or raised outside a normal human environment who come in and are literally afraid of everything from a drawer opening and shutting to a vacuum or a blender. Now, when we are talking about the first group, the group that's comfortable with just about everything but gets highly sensitive to thunderstorms or fireworks, when you see those dogs, I'd love to hear some of the tips you share, but also do you encourage they use medication for these periodic disturbances? What is your view?
Yeah, so boy, it's a big topic.
I know.
And
We can talk for
and
hours.
yep, yep. And there are so many dogs that struggle with storm anxiety. There's a lot of words to use it, storm anxiety, storm sensitivity, storm phobia. Um, Usually with those dogs, like you said, there are some dogs that are managing the rest of their world just fine, but most of the time, if you dig a little deeper, there are comorbidities. So often there are other things that the dogs are struggling with, like separation anxiety. There's a big correlation between storm anxiety and separation anxiety. At any rate, there are lots of things that we can do. Obviously, we want to, check out the environment, see if there's any way it can be modified. We want to talk to owners about picking up on really the early signs of anxiety about storms, not just wait until the dog is, peeing and pooping and scrambling and scratching and trying to escape. But some of the more subtle signs, like just simply trembling or salivating or not eating. We have a whole slew of things like thunder shirts and mutt muffs and happy hoodies that are apparati that you can put on the dog that may or may not help. There are some nutraceuticals that are used, things like L-theanine, tryptophan, the natural scent of lavender may be calming to dogs, dog appeasing pheromone, which is something the mothers make when they have puppies. There's a synthetic form of that we can put in collars or spray bedding. Sometimes those things help. Sometimes for the dogs that are really struggling, we need to step to prescription medications for those situations. There's lots of them. We don't need to be scared about using them. They're very safe. And they often will get a quality of life back for these dogs who really struggle, especially in July, because a lot of the dogs that struggle with storms are also struggling with fireworks. So if you can't modify your environment, you can't control your neighbors, doing the fireworks, or, it's this week, right, all the storms, maybe we need to consider some prescription medications.
Now, when you say that, do you generally go to short-acting prescription medication because their anxiety is less prevalent during the day, or more long-term?
Yeah. So it depends on the case.
So it's case to case.
Yep, case to case. There's no one size fits all ever for dogs.
Or people.
Right, or people,
Right.
exactly. And as we know with people, just like with our dogs, they're, every animal is unique with their sensory system. So,
It's so fascinating. right?
I mean,
What
even
works,
just
there's no go-to. Give them
exactly.
this.
Yeah. Um, there are some really great medications out there. We often use these days, right now, alprazolam, which is Xanax. Sometimes we use gabapentin. We use something called Celio, which is a great new-ish drug. We want to stay away from acepromazine, which is a drug, sort of an old school veterinary drug that is a sedative and sadly will make a dog sometimes
Worse.
more
Right.
noise sensitive. So we want to
Right.
stay away from acepromazine. Um, obviously these are things you need to talk to your primary care vet about.
Exactly.
And it should be a conversation, a dialogue, and not just, slapping on some medication.
Right. Now, the dogs, so we live here in the Northeast, and we know that many of the animals in our close environment have been spayed and neutered. And so many of the shelters are bringing them up from the South. And many of these dogs are free range. So they haven't either been in a house or they mostly live outside. And both of us see dogs in this scenario. Some are afraid even to walk on a wood floor, and they notice if a pan drops, the dog is like scrambling to escape. In that case, I would assume that you're focused more on a long-term
Mhm.
medication.
Yes, yes. And again, I try really to talk to people about, is there any way they can modify their home environment for these dogs? Because it is,
Runners, carpet
yeah,
runners,
yeah,
things like that.
exactly. Get some covering. We all love our big wide open windows, but sometimes that's
Right,
really scary for dogs.
right.
So do what you can to sort of meet your dog and, provide for your dog. But again, sometimes the anxieties about these daily noises or daily, the environment that we provide, we can't control it. So, yes, we do often will use some daily long-term medications. Those typically these days would be an SSRI. So that would be something like Prozac or Zoloft.
Explain to everybody what SSRI means.
So SSRI stands for a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And basically that means
That's a mouthful.
it's, yeah, it's going to make that, so this, we all make serotonin.
Serotonin is the happy hormone.
Exactly. It's a
Right.
neurotransmitter. It's going to make that serotonin that you already make, it makes it more available. So it doesn't get recycled as quickly. And so it blocks it from being tossed away, basically. So it's more available for our brains to make us feel better.
Right. So for those people who don't study biology or who want a quick, like, dumbified explanation, the serotonin, which is a happy hormone, has to get into the bloodstream or the
Mhm.
brain. So it
Yep.
has to get into the bloodstream. Is it blocked because the cortisol is more prevalent? So the dogs.
Well, so yeah, so they're all connected, right? So there are all these neuroendocrine pathways in our bodies that connect the neurons to the hormones that we make, and cortisol is a hormone. So the release of the hormone is going to be controlled by a cascade of events that start in the brain, that then trickle down to all of our different organs, including the adrenal glands that produce cortisol. Um, and so there's all sorts of connections that are very complicated, and you could look at these really complicated diagrams and it would be sort of clear, but it's very, very complicated. So basically, we want serotonin to be available. We want dopamine to be more available, and we do have to be a little careful because there are a lot of things that we try to do to like counter condition and make these positive associations, and sometimes that works with the lower level anxieties. But if the dog is really, if the dog is trembling, shaking, retreating, hiding,
And you're shouting, sit, sit, sit. It's not actually going to make them feel
no,
better.
it's not going to really help.
And they really do. They shut down. They won't eat.
Yeah,
They won't process. They just want to escape.
yeah. Yeah. So, just back to a natural thing to do. We all know that dogs have incredible noses. So provide your dog with a nice, relaxing sniffari. Like go out and have a nice walk. Don't try and accomplish a whole 5 miles, right? That's going to give your dog relaxation, which will then help.
So a sniffari is like taking them on just a walk. Just take
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
somewhere new, or well, maybe not somewhere new if they're anxious, but let them just smell. Don't
Yeah.
like commands are not, they're not foot soldiers.
Exactly. That's a treatment for anxiety is let your dog sniff around.
Right.
It can be that basic.
Right. Right. I love it. I love it. Okay, so just back to the SSRI, the serotonin inhibitors. So I know that fluoxetine, which is Prozac, is almost a go-to with many vets to start there and
Hmm.
see if
Yep.
if it takes effect. And there are also, I've seen hemp treats, hemp oil. Is that something you suggest initially?
Here's the thing about CBD or hemp. I'm open to it. I just haven't used it a lot, and I look to some of my, senior mentors who have used it, and
Right.
it is being used here and there. It's a little bit of a hard time trying to figure out where the source is and where to get it and what's the dose and by the way, it's kind of expensive. So by the time someone gets to me, because I usually am dealing with sort of, the cases that have been passed off from somebody else, maybe the primary care vet is like, I don't know anymore, just go see Dr. Cutler or whatever. By the time they get to me, usually we're going to start to use some of the drugs that have a lot of studies behind them, like
Right.
fluoxetine, right?
Right.
And that fluoxetine is a great drug for anxiety, for dogs who are struggling with everyday, the noises, the environment, the, storms, but everyday noises. Prozac can be a very, very helpful drug.
Right. Right. So much good information. And again, as Sarah said, the behavioral tips you've heard on this podcast do not take the place of seeing your vet and medicating your dog if these anxieties are interrupting the flow of their everyday life.
Right.
Remember, what you do for your dog is for your dog. It's not to make life simpler for you, it's to make life more comfortable for them. So thank you for your time, and
Oh,
it
thank
was great to
you.
connect with
Yeah.
you, and I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll have you back again.
Bye.